Throughout human history, we have witnessed a recurring phenomenon. Great empires have always sought to use religion as a tool to consolidate absolute power. From the Roman Empire under Constantine to the Ottoman Empire, from Chinese dynasties to the colonial empires of Europe, a complex system was established to transform religious belief into an instrument of political control, influencing billions of people over many centuries. This was not a random occurrence, but the result of political authority recognizing the immense potential of religious faith to legitimize and maintain its rule. Today, we will analyze this system from historical and sociological perspectives to understand how empires turned religion into a tool of absolute power and to draw important lessons for protecting religious freedom and democratic rights in the modern world. If you are interested in exploring history as a way to build a safer future for democracy and religious freedom, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Historical knowledge helps us identify and prevent similar patterns from reappearing today. To understand why the model of imperializing religion could exist, we need to examine the historical context of ancient and medieval civilizations. According to research by Dr. Karen Armstrong of Oxford University in her book Fields of Blood, Religion and the History of Violence, the era in which great empires formed was characterized by three crucial factors. First, the political factor. Empires required systems to legitimize their authority over vast territories inhabited by diverse peoples. Religion provided a transcendent foundation that rose above ethnic and local cultural boundaries. For example, Roman Emperor Constantine used Christianity to unify a multi-ethnic empire, while the Ottoman sultans used Islam to legitimize their rule over the Christian Balkans. Second, the social factor. Pre-modern societies lacked democratic institutions and modern communication systems. Religion served as the primary channel to reach the people through networks of churches, temples, and clergy. According to historian Dr. Maid McCulloch, in the 16th century, at least 90% of Europe's population received information primarily through weekly religious services. Third, the economic factor. Religious institutions often owned vast tracts of land and possessed strong financial resources. Controlling these organizations meant controlling huge economic assets. Research by Professor Michael McCormick of Harvard shows that in the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church owned about 25 to 30% of all arable land in Western Europe. These conditions created an environment in which the model of imperializing religion could flourish without facing significant resistance from other independent forces. It is important to note that this model was not unique to a particular civilization. Throughout history, we have seen similar systems in many regions. In China, emperors used the mandate of heaven to justify absolute authority, blending Confucianism with political power. In India, Mughal rulers used Islam to legitimize their rule over a Hindu majority, while earlier Hindu dynasties used the Varna system to maintain social order. In Europe, from the Roman Empire to absolute monarchies such as France and Spain, the divine right of kings became a major political instrument. This shows that combining religion with absolute power was the result of structural needs in governing complex societies, not an anomaly of a specific culture. According to sociologist Max Weber, this is a form of traditional authority reinforced by supernatural elements. Legal and theological legitimization. This system was legitimized through complex legal and theological mechanisms. For example, in the Byzantine Empire, the emperor was regarded as God's representative on earth, with the right to intervene in doctrinal matters. According to research by Dr. Judith Herrin, an expert on Byzantine history at King's College London, the Byzantine emperor was not only the secular ruler, but also the head of the church, with the authority to appoint the patriarch and decide on major theological issues. The role of religion in legitimizing absolute power is clearly documented in historical texts. For instance, the Edict of Milan, 313 CE, was not only the legalization of Christianity, but also the first step in turning the Church into an instrument of the Roman state. Similarly, Ottoman sultans used the title caliph to justify authority not just in the Ottoman realm, but over the entire Islamic world. According to Professor Peter Brown in Power and Persuasion in Late Antiquity, the system of turning religion into a tool of absolute power operated through three main mechanisms: selection and appointment of religious leaders. Records show that high-ranking religious positions were chosen based on political loyalty rather than religious competence. For example, in the Byzantine Empire, the appointment of the Patriarch of Constantinople required the emperor's approval. Historical research indicates that about 75% of patriarchs from the 6th to the 11th centuries had direct ties to the imperial court or were nominated by the emperor. This process was organized by the imperial council and followed strict political procedures rather than religious tradition. The process of operating and controlling doctrine, research by Professor John Haldon, shows that defining official doctrine took place through church councils controlled by the imperial court, often lasting months or even years, with direct participation from the emperor and senior officials. Decisions were based not only on theological grounds, but also on specific political interests. Systems of oversight and message dissemination. Vatican Library archives reveal a complex network of clergy trained to spread messages pre-approved by political authority. This system functioned as an effective propaganda machine, carrying the will of the empire to every village through ceremonies and religious teaching. The scale of impact. Researchers estimate the impact of this system was enormous. In the Roman Empire from the 4th to 6th centuries, the total number of people affected by the policy of imperializing Christianity was about 50 to 60 million over 200 years. Annually, about 250,000 to 300,000 people converted or were forced to change their religious practices. Geographically, around 70% of cases were concentrated in the eastern provinces of the empire. The majority of those affected were between 15 and 45 years old, making up 60% of the total. Dr. Avril Cameron of Oxford University noted, "These figures reveal the immense scale and systematic nature of the transformation of the religious political structure of the Roman Empire. This was not a natural transition, but a carefully planned top-down reform." A similar pattern occurred in the Ottoman Empire, where the millet system affected about 25 to 30 million people of various religions over its 400-year existence. Why such systems endured? The longevity and expansion of this system relied on three key mechanisms: control over information and education. Empires monopolized the production and distribution of religious knowledge. In medieval Europe, for example, only monasteries were permitted to copy scriptures, and all content had to be censored by church authorities under state control. Literacy was kept low, below 10% in most regions, to ensure reliance on clergy for religious information. Institutional protection through law. Legal records from these eras reveal harsh laws against heresy and religious treason, enforced by religious courts with broad judicial powers. For example, the Spanish Inquisition not only handled religious issues but also served as a tool to eliminate political opposition. Economic and social interest networks. As historian Fernand Braudel explained, the system created tangible benefits for nobility, merchants, and intellectuals through the allocation of powerful religious offices and economic privileges, forming a strong alliance defending the system. Impacts on individuals, society, and culture. From a psychological perspective, Dr. Sarah Foote of Cambridge University found that being forced to conform to a state-imposed belief system created deep internal conflict, evidenced in personal diaries and letters. Many lived in dual faith, outwardly practicing the state religion while privately maintaining personal beliefs. Socially, families and communities were fractured, with members forced to choose between loyalty to family traditions and obedience to the state. This led to the collapse of traditional communities and loss of cultural heritage. Culturally, anthropologist Jack Goody documented the disappearance of many art forms, festivals, and local traditions incompatible with state-backed religion. In many regions, minority languages declined as the dominant religious language was imposed in education and worship. Resistance ranged from passive to active. From the 4th century, underground religious movements such as Donatism in North Africa and Gnostic groups in the Eastern Mediterranean emerged, with tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of participants. Passive resistance included maintaining traditional practices in secret, refusing to attend official ceremonies, and spreading alternative teachings. Scholars and independent intellectuals played a vital role in preserving alternative knowledge. Peripheral monasteries, private libraries, and international scholarly networks became centers of intellectual resistance, as documented by Peter Brown in his studies of intellectual resistance in late antiquity. While these efforts helped preserve some traditions, they often failed to fundamentally change the system, serving more to maintain than to overthrow. Decline and end. Such systems eventually weakened and ended at different times across empires due to the growth of education and rising literacy, which reduced the monopoly on interpreting doctrine, as seen in the European Reformation. The emergence of alternative ideological and political frameworks during the Enlightenment, offering new ways to legitimize political power without religion. External pressures and geopolitical shifts, which forced rulers to accommodate religious diversity to maintain stability. As Professor Charles Taylor observed in A Secular Age, the end of absolute religious power was not the result of a single revolution, but a complex evolution in which the diversification of knowledge and political competition undermined the monopoly of any system in defining truth and authority. Modern parallels. In the 20th century, this model reappeared in totalitarian regimes that replaced traditional religion with ideology. Nazi Germany, Stalin's Soviet Union, and Mao's China all used similar mechanisms: comprehensive belief systems, control over information and education, and networks of interests. Hannah Arendt, in The Origins of Totalitarianism, noted that these regimes borrowed and adapted many techniques from earlier models. In the 21st century, new variations have emerged, such as extremist groups using religion to justify political violence or authoritarian regimes blending nationalism with religion to control society. Political scientists Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt, in How Democracies Die, have highlighted these worrying similarities. According to Freedom House's 2024 report, around 4.9 billion people, about 62% of the world's population, live in countries with some degree of restriction on religious freedom. International frameworks and monitoring. The 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the 1966 International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights established basic principles of religious freedom and separation of powers. Article 18 of both documents affirms the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, including the right to change one's faith and express beliefs within limits that respect the rights of others. The UN monitors religious freedom through its Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Religion or Belief, while organizations such as Freedom House, Pew Research Center, and Open Doors conduct independent monitoring. Educational programs on democracy, human rights, and history are run in over 150 countries by UNESCO and other international NGOs, emphasizing the importance of separating power and protecting religious diversity. Debates in academia. The functionalist school, represented by Talcott Parsons and Robert Bellah, sees religion as a positive force for social cohesion and political stability. They argue that combining religion and power is not necessarily negative and can stabilize society by providing shared transcendent values. The critical theory school, including Jürgen Habermas and José Casanova, counters that exploiting religion for political purposes is inherently dangerous to democracy and individual freedom, citing historical evidence of negative consequences. They argue that religion can only play a positive social role when independent from the state. Lessons for today. History shows that any system of power without checks and balances tends to expand and abuse its authority. Separation of power should extend beyond the executive, legislative, and judicial branches to include religion and the media. Democracies must ensure diverse sources of information and critical education, especially in the digital age where information can be controlled and manipulated more easily than ever. Independent civil society networks are vital in resisting abuses of power. Religious organizations, when independent from the state, can play an important role in defending human rights and holding power accountable, but only where diversity and healthy competition among them is preserved. As Charles Taylor wrote in A Secular Age, "The most important lesson from history is not whether religion is good or bad, but that concentrated power, whether religious, political, or economic, always carries the risk of abuse. Democratic societies must create mechanisms to distribute and mutually check power." Studying the model of the empire that turned religion into absolute power reveals 3 key points. Combining religion with absolute political power is not unique to any single culture or era, but a recurring pattern in human history. The critical importance of separating powers and ensuring diversity in information and education systems. The practical application of these insights in building and protecting modern democratic institutions. Understanding history is not just about the past, but about building a safer future for religious freedom and democracy. If this video has helped you understand more about the complex relationship between religion and political power, please share it with others who care about defending democratic freedom and religious diversity. Subscribe to the channel for more meaningful historical analysis of important topics, and let me know in the comments, what do you think is the most important lesson from today's discussion? Is it the importance of separating powers, the role of education in protecting freedom, or another aspect we have explored? Thank you for taking the time to explore this complex but necessary topic. Understanding history helps us become more responsible citizens in defending democratic and religious freedoms. We will meet again in the next video, where we will continue to explore important lessons from history to build a better world. If you'd like, I can now reformat this translation into a polished, documentary-style narration, so it flows like a professional history video script. That would make it even more engaging for a YouTube audience.